Okay. There is fire on the mountain. There is fire on the mountain. So let me quickly go in. This stream, I would, if at any point you wish to join me, you have the opportunity to join me live and make your own contribution. This is YouTube Direct. We are not streaming on Facebook or any other place. We're only streaming on YouTube. So if you want to join me at any point in time, you can see the pinned comment here. Pinned comment. Just click on the pinned comment and you can join me. Right? Click on the pinned comment, then you can join me. So people, there is something that is just happened, or rather, it's no longer a developing story. It's a story that was already developed. That the government is really, really, getting on the nerves of Nigerians. Then one begins to wonder: is the government already planning to rig, or are they already rigging the 2027 presidential election? Right. So please, please, please share with others. Let's do this analysis, quick one. So the analysis here, let me read this out for you today. Let me read this out for you today. The Nigerian Senate rejected electronic transmission of result. If you understand what that means, that and they also blocked the download of electronic voters card from the INEC website. Before you could actually download the voters, your voters card with QR code, but they've blocked it. They now stopped it. They've reduced notice of election from 360 days to 180 days, right? So it means before now, like in 2023 election, you need to give notice of that election 1 year ahead of time. But by that reduction, they've done it by 6 months. What I am suspecting that is happening here is that there was a rumor that the president was going to, or rather, the INEC was going to pull back the election to happen in June. If by these 160 days, that is becoming, in my view, a reality, I would explain. The parties are to do their primaries on or before June 2026. So that means the parties have 4 months to do their primaries and have their candidates. By June, we still have 6 months to the next that is in December. So what I am now thinking is before May, that we may see that INEC suddenly brings out a new timetable that says that the election will happen in December. The argument will be that they also want to give enough time for litigation, because the argument, in my view, that they want to now pursue is they give enough time for litigation to ensure that whoever wins the presidency would be out of court. Recall that Tinubu was already sworn in as president when in 2023 we were headed to court. Now they want to, based on that argument, because we made that argument. I was among those that made the argument on several interviews I had with Kenneth Okonkwo then. Kenneth Okonkwo, I mean, every one of us made that was plausible. But now, because many of us had made that argument, the Nigerian government now is wanting to use the argument we've made to sort of rig the election by 2 months. Because they are in power. Tinubu, for the past 2 years, has been campaigning. You can imagine what is happening in Rivers State. We Yusuf Wike, who is not a member of APC, is not a member of PDP, he's been sacked from the PDP, is buying vehicles for renewed hope. On one hand, you have the renewed hope ambassadors. Last Christmas, if you don't know, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu sent through Governor Hope Uzodinma, sent every single traditional ruler in the southeast, in the south-south, in the southwest, sent them Christmas card and Christmas messages through the Renewed Hope initiative. On one hand, the Renewed Hope politicians, they are running their thing. On the other hand, through his son, you have what they call the city boys. That's what you now see. Benjamin Carlo is in, the number 6 person is among the city boys. You see Obi Kubana, who day before yesterday, Obi Kubana, this video where president's son went to his house and they gone to, this video. Let me show us. I want to first of all say thank you very much for your support and to Nigeria and to youth and young people in Nigeria, especially in the southern region and the whole country as a whole. On behalf of the City Boy movement, we wanted to present your recognition letter, the appointment letter, as the regional director of the Southeast for City Boy. And on behalf of the City Boy organization, thank you very much. On your mandate, we shall stand. On your mandate, on your mandate, on your mandate, we shall stand. So now, this is it. On their mandate, they are standing. This is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's son. This is Sheyi Tinubu, who visited Obi Kubana on Monday and handed him personally the City Boy Regional Coordinator certificate. So if you understand what I'm saying here, on one plank, you have the governors who have already started campaigning. On the other plank, you have the City Boy movement. On the other one, you have the APC that is coercing every single governor. The Southeast is gone, totally, 100% gone, without exception. The one who have in Anambra is APCA APC. We know, I mean, it's been APCA APC since 4 years. We know that. In the last election, it was APCA APC. Ebonyi State is APC. Imo State is APC. Enugu State is APC. And the other one is no comment. But anyway, the fact here is when we look at this and we begin to appreciate and think about this, it will begin to make sense to us that the idea behind, and honestly, I will be disappointed if from tomorrow Nigerians are not outraged by this. Because if you look at this, what they've now done is to say that they reduced notice of election from 360 days to 180 days, cut down timeline for publishing list of candidates from 150 days to 60 days. These compressed timelines will increase the risk of logistic problem during election, which the Senate passed today. This is, in my view, this is not a reform. This is the betrayal of public trust and a deliberate attempt to weaken all the guardrails for credible election. The senator's position sharply contrasts and contradicts with the progressive position taken by the House of Representatives. We hope the committee will look into this. Now, you begin to ask yourself, in the 2023 election, we were happy that 1 year ahead of time, almost 1 year ahead of time, you should know who is in the game. For the first time, at least those who were not popular enough should begin, not all these 60 days, 120 days, 130 days. That is indeed a tragedy, if you ask me. It is indeed a tragedy, and every people are angry, and civil liberty groups are already beginning to say their mind. If you ask me again, I think that the recent decision by the Nigerian Senate to reject these critical provisions of the proposed electoral amendment, particularly those aimed at strengthening the mandatory electronic transmission of election results, is deeply concerning and represent a setback to democratic progress in Nigeria. If I go to Channels TV report, let me quickly pull it in. If I go to Channels TV report, it would then, let me hold on, Imran. Yeah, let me quickly pull out the report here. Okay, now look, hear this. The Nigerian Senate has rejected proposed amendments that would have made electronic transmission of election results compulsory, opting instead to retain the existing provision from the 2022 Electoral Act. For the fact that this Senate, the rubber stampers, I don't want to, let me tell you, if the khaki boys ever come close to upsurging this democracy, we must hold every single person in the Senate responsible, because that is what they are pushing for. If not, why would the Senate be this careless rather than improve on what we had for 2022-23? Even under Buhari, how can you then electronic transmission that people have been clamoring for? That the common sense is what you just go in and say, bagam, you no longer do again, that doesn't make sense, and you want to reject it, and you want to remove it. Today, during their plenary session on Wednesday, senators considered the bill for an act to repeal, pay attention, somebody put in a bill, an act to repeal, that is the old one. And in that repealing, during the plenary session on Wednesday today, senators considered the bill for an act to repeal the Electoral Act number 13, 2022, and enact the Electoral Act 2025. A key proposed clause, which is something that is now new, is Section 60, subsection 5, that would have required presiding officers to electronically transmit polling unit results in real time to INEC IRF portal after completing Form EC8A, and this was rejected. Do you know how Rivers election was rigged? If you see the 2023 election result, let me see if I can see INEC results, INEC results, INEC results, INEC result, mutilated. I just want to see if I can see the mutilated result. INEC result, is it? INEC, oh, sorry. Result, I made a mistake. INEC result. Yep. So, what they want to do is they don't want to transmit this result in real time. They want us to go back to this. If you look at River State, this is the only thing you will see. See? This is the type of thing you will see. Transmitting means this is IREV. This is IREV, right? IREV. We've collected it. Mazezoke scored 50. Benjamin Mungunu scored 300. And Babangida Mutabina scored 5,000. Mazezoke lost this polling unit. I'm just trying to break this down for us to understand in simple terms. What the people are requesting is, we know this is what has been scored. We've looked at it. Mazezoke have signed, have scored 50. Press it. Let that become law that it goes from that polling unit to IRF. No. Why would they want to do it? They don't want. That is what they are now done. They want that we will take it to a collation center, another layer. At the collation center, you can kidnap the man in charge of that collation center and force that man. In the last election, how many days did it take Rivers? Rivers didn't come out because they were busy changing the result. They couldn't have changed the result if it was mandatory that as of that time your calling it is being transmitted. In Lagos, the same thing happened. In states, I voted in my community in Anambra State. In that time of that election, they rigged us out by delivering the materials very late to us. The materials, they were supposed to be there before 8, but in my polling unit, materials came about 3 minutes past 12. People from Idemili were calling me, my coordinators then calling me, telling me that as of 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. Some areas 2 o'clock. Materials. Anambra State is a very tiny place, less than 4,500 kilometers square. From one end of Anambra to the other, with good roads, because the roads are good. You could crisscross Anambra from one end to the other in less than an hour, 30 minutes. Yet, we had materials in Oka that if I want to, from my polling unit, if I want to drive down to Oka, within 25 minutes, maximum 32 to 35 minutes, I'll be in Oka. That you deliberately waited until 2, 1, 2, or thereabout before you could deliver the result. So the rigging of the 2027 presidential election or elections is already started. That's what we are seeing. They want us to go back to this, where results will be mutilated. Please like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me take some of your comment. But at any point in time, if you want to be part of this, at any point in time, if you want to be part of this, you can always come in. Part of this. At any point in time, at any point in time, if you want to, Otenku, yeah, I greet you. Let me see. Were you expecting a reform that will prevent them from rigging? Well, not necessarily a reform that will prevent them from rigging, but when you know that a lot is happening and your credibility is nosediving, sometimes you do things, to redeem yourself. I wasn't expect them. These are not angels. I wasn't expect them for to do anything critical, but at least that they could redeem themselves, right? That's the way I look at it. And to note that these guys are just doing this is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. That at the end of the day, this is what the Nigerian Senate, the rubber stampers, the Natasha Poti pursuers, they didn't. Oh dear. Now, if you know you're a senator, My senator will be having a piece of my mind this night. The moment I finish my own live stream here, I will write him and tell him a piece of my mind. If not for anything, it should be on record. So if you have your number of your senator, tell them what you think and how disappointed you are. Let's see if they will eventually come back to their senses. Now, listen to this. One of the amendment reduced. No, sorry, that's okay. Sorry, this is okay. So, who is the chairman of the committee? Senate President Godswill Akpabio announced that a joint committee of the Senate and House of Representatives will meet to harmonize the act and send it to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for accent. See, when it comes to anything that will benefit Nigerians, they will dilly dally. When it comes to anything that will benefit them, sharp sharp. On your mandate, that's our national anthem now in the National Assembly. On their mandate they shall fall. On their mandate they shall fall. On their mandate, on their mandate, on their mandate they shall fall. That is their own mandate. Other members are Takea Mungunu, Adamu Alero, Oji Carlo, Abamoro, Asokwo Ekpion, Aminu Abbas, Tokumbo Abiru, and Simon Lalong. That's the former governor of Plateau State. Akpabio clarified that the Senate did not remove the electronic transmission of election results from the law. Distinguished colleagues, the social media is already awash with the reports that the Senate has literally rejected electronic transmission of results, he said. That is not the case. What we did was to retain the electronic transmission, which has been in the Act and was used in 2022. So please do not allow people to confuse you. If you are in doubt, we will make your final votes and proceedings available to you if you apply. The Senate under my watch has not rejected the electronic vote. You see, sometimes they just want to turn people's head and get people confused. No one is arguing that that they've removed it. What they are saying, what is trying to confuse the people now, is to say, oh, people are saying that they removed it. But when you say that it is not mandatory, what have you done? When you say it is not mandatory, what have you done? Well, the people are saying that you make it a law. It must be, must, M-U-S-T. But no, silent. Off the mic. You off mic. Please like, share, like, share, like, share, like, share, subscribe. The previous the previous has made allowance for electronic transmission, so it is still there as part of our law. We cannot afford to be going backwards, blah, blah, blah. That's the Senate president responding, right? Just in Senate passes Electoral Act amendment. So after 5 hours, obviously, after 5 hours, the bill will only item listed on the order paper after validatory session for the late Oke Ezia. That is Oke Ezia, the senator representing, is it Enugu North, that died? That was of Labour Party, a very intellectually mobile human being. May his soul rest in peace. The point here is Senate passes electoral law. The point here is that the Senate president is being economical with the truth and is trying to confuse a lot of people. He's trying to confuse a lot of people, right? The Senate president is being economical with the truth. The Senate president is being. Okay, let me see if we can. While that is happening, the people of the Southeast Development Commission had its 50-year plan unveiled in Enugu today, and the president, the VP of the Republic, Shetima, was there, and the governors of the Southeast excluding the governor of Imo State. We're all there. And finally, I will close with this. The uproar about the book for history that was approved, that uproar, once there was a video that came out, once the video came out, many people started complaining. What some of us did was to write the Ministry of Education to say, can you avail us and confirm if this is true? And eventually, late hours of day before yesterday, the ministry came back to say, no, that if that book is not that is not correct. And before then, I had already bought that book, because what I did was to go, and I'll share that with us now. What I did was to go online and order that book, because you could do that. So I ordered the book online. Hold on, let me see. Okay. I ordered the book online, and I ordered year one, year two, year three, year four, year five, from the same author, and I paid. And I started reading that book because I wanted to comment based on information. This is the books. These are the books here, right? So when I paid for this. I paid one, two. No, sorry. Okay. I paid for, these are the books here. So I paid the electronic version just to read them. And I've read them all. I've read them all. Right? So I wanted to talk from an informed position. Now, before I tell you what I found out in that book, I will say this. It is always better to talk from an informed position. However, the Minister of Education talked about the book was not approved. That's a fact. But I've gone back to the minister to say, can we have the book that was approved? He pointed back again to this, which is, if you look at this, if we look at this, we will see under history, let me read it out. What he says is origin of Nigerian societies, myth of origin, Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, others. That is in the curriculum. That is in the curriculum, not necessarily in the book itself. But what we can see that clearly in the curriculum here, under Nigerian people and languages, the students must study major ethnic groups and their locations, languages, and diversity. It is here in the curriculum. Early settlements in Nigeria, Nok culture, Igbo Ukwu, Ife, and Benin. Look at it here. This is the curriculum. Because when we started probing, this information started coming out. So, I got this. Now, if we come back again, traditional political system one. Traditional political system one. You now have Yoruba Kingdom, Oyo Ife, Igbo village democracy. It will be then unfair to make a judgment based on a book, because if this book was approved, then I would have had issues. But even at that, this book, let me read something for us. I like the electronic version. Let me see. Let me read something for us. This is the book here. So if I touch here, it will go to the next page. Okay. So you can see who wrote that book. That is the electronic version here, right? So now you can see again. So this is where the issue is. I want people to take note. If you look at the table of content, let me read the table of content here. The table of content is where the issue is. Whoever wants, I can take a screenshot and send it to you. The table of contents has the meaning of history, land and people of Nigeria, again, which is contained in the curriculum. Prehistory, early centuries of civilization, centralized states, page 31, where when you talk about centralized states, the Igbo doesn't fall within the centralized states. That's when you talk about the Hausa Fulani, the Kanuri Empire, the mostly the northern and the western states were the centralized states. Then you have the Hausa states, the Kanuri states, the Kanuri Empire, Nupe Kingdom, the Egala and Jukum, the Yorubas of Ife and Oyo, the Benin Kingdom up to 1800, the Efik, the Niger Delta, and the Shekiri. Where people, including myself, have issue is if you have centralized states, Igbo is not part of the centralized state. I do not expect to see Igbo there, right? But when you now list other Kenuri Empire that is not as wide in population as to the Igbo, in quote unquote, then you list the other one, list Efik. It's right and it is good that you put them there. But why did you then exclude that? So Mr. Taiwo, whoever wrote that book, as the minister said, that book is better put in the dustbin of history from the table of content. However, that is from the table of content. However, if you now go into the book itself, let me go to page. If you now go to the book itself, this particular page here, I read this. It talks about the sources of history and defines history, just elementary stuff, excursion to history sites, exhibition, blah, blah, blah. Now, I think the problem that the error that they made is when they got to this place, land and people of Nigeria. See the subheading here, land and people of Nigeria. Because if you do not read this book page by page, if you stopped at the table of content, you'll be misled. This book, bear in mind, is not approved. But even at that, if you stop at the table of content, you'll be misled. I want to read something which, when I read it and I said to myself, wow, whoever put this book together did a disservice to himself because it appears to be intentional. He did a disservice. The disservice is, even in the subheadings, they didn't show intellectual rigor because they didn't head them properly. I will explain what I mean. Let me get that part here. So where there is a part, okay, now listen to this. This is a place where they say the forest regions, okay? Now look at this. The subheading is wonky. It's wonky. It shows people who have done a shabby job because they could have, organized the table of content very well. But let me read us. The forest region. This is an area of tall trees and dense vegetation. The forest grows rapidly because of the rain that falls from June to November. The use of iron implement enables forest dwellers to conquer their environment. States that are situated in the region are Oyo, Ogun, Osun, Edo, Imo, Anambra, Abia, and Enugu. Now, it will be unfair to make commentary, as many people have done, without bothering to read the whole book. Without even bothering to, because here, when I said this, their table of content is wonky Because from what you are now going to see on this chapter that is titled Prehistory, Early Centuries of Civilization. Which civilization? Various ethnic nationalities in Nigeria. It is then you can see an extensive reportage in this particular chapter that is done on Ibuku, on the Nok culture. But here you look at, this is the Nok, right? This is the Ife. I'm going one by one. So this is the Ife, and this is the Nok again, right? Nok and Ife. This is Nok and Ife in the same book. Oh, this is Benin, right? The history of the Benin. Can you read this? Can you see the face? Can you read this? Now they started talking about the Ibuku culture and artifacts. Where is Ibuku? Their subheadings messed the work up. If you now read here, you will see Ibuku lines. Let me read what they wrote here. Let me read the part that, because what has been agog on the internet is the part that concerns Ndibo. So pardon me, I'm going to only on this live stream take the part that concerns only what has been making rounds online, right? Because I think these days people make noise without necessarily wanting to, everything is content these days anyway. Okay, let me take this. It says, Ibuku lies about 30 kilometers southeast of Onitsha. In 1939, a man hired to dig a latrine pit by Isaac Anozie accidentally discovered some object, an ornament made of bronze. Further excavations on the site by Professor uh, Tosman Shaw between 1960 and 1964 revealed sacred vessels used for some ceremonial or ritual purposes and of ornaments and regalia for some important persons or person for some important person or persons. This was possibly a shrine. This site is referred to as Ibuku Isaiah. No, Ibuku Isaiah. Okay. Then in the next page, it continues. Then it shows you. No, sorry. In the next page, it continues, and it shows you this. And the subheading now reads Igbo Richard and Igbo Jonah. Before I read this, there was some Igbo. I know about Igbo Isaiah. That is the site that was visited by Tubman Shaw. But when I read this, and let me please come with me, please like, share, and subscribe because the link to join the live is in the comment section. Hold on. I will come back to the reading, but let me confirm. The link to join the live is shared in the comment section. Just look at the pinned message now. There is a pinned message in the comment section. So if you want to join me, please click on the link in the pinned section. You can join me. We've started with what the Nigerian Senate have done to us, and now I want to end by talking about, yes, I've been meaning to do a video on this, but now that I'm live, I could as well talk about it. So here, okay. So these Ibuku Richard. Let me read it out for you. In fact, I think what I will do in the comment section, I'll ask them to take screenshots. Look at it here. Can you see it? Let me read it out. It says, oh, this thing is tiny. I've been on my eye, they do me. Okay. Let me read it out for you. Igbo Richard. The second site, Igbo Richard, was a burial chamber for some important person. The individual was found in a sitting position atop a copper. Stood it in the corner of a wood-lined chamber. Its arms were supported on copper brackets and had dressed in coronation finery with a copper crown, a bead-covered head dress, a copper pectoral plate on the chest, 14 anklets, 4 wristlets, and a pair of bead inlaid copper armlet. In one hand, it held a fly switch whose handle portrayed a horse and its rider. There were also 3 elephant tusks and a long-handled hand fan with feathers and copper holders. That is Igbo Richard. He continued. The third site, Igbo Jonah, appeared to be a refuse pit, but produced the most decorated pots ever to be made by a potter. There was also 200 finely worked copper wire links. Other objects of the copper or bronze were 35 wrestles, 2 small bowls, 6 cylindrical staff ornaments, a long painted rod, a large jingle ornament, and various other miscellaneous pieces, and a large quantity of broken pottery, as well as a number of complete vessels. So that's where the Ibuku pot. Now, here they showed a picture of the pot. Here, that is the picture of the pot. And they continue again. From here, you see why I think partly could be that there was a deliberate attempt, but in my view, the classifications also didn't do a good job because suddenly, for a book that is teaching children, just after what I read, now jumped next into significance of early centuries of civilization in Nigeria. Then he says, firstly, it's adequately proved that early man in Nigeria participated in the Stone Age. Archaeological discovery in Diama and Bonu, Iwo Eleru in Osun, and Nok all points to the fact that early Nigerians fashioned stone stone tools like other groups elsewhere in the world. Indeed, there was evidences of Achilon and Sango tools in Nigeria. He continued to now outline what was also in other parts of Africa and other parts of Nigeria. Maybe on this particular book, and this book has given me an idea what, by the time the minister eventually, if he responds to my message, or the nerds, if they eventually respond, if they eventually respond to the messages I've sent, it has given me an idea of what to expect. From the curriculum that I shared with us before, you can see that the curriculum is concentrating on civilizations, not necessarily to what many of you are thinking. Oh, they want to teach the children about the war. I can tell you that there is not a mention of the war, both in the curriculum, in this book, and in the book that will still be approved. The histories of the regions will be learned, the histories of the entities, the Yoruba, the Ife, the Igbo, the Bini, the Efik, the histories will be learned. Anyone expecting that those books will then contain the conflict in 67 is making a big mistake, because if you go to early pioneers, if you go to them from the books I've read on this, if I go out of this book and go to the second one, that is for, I think, JS2, junior secondary school 2, that is JS2, see it here. The other one, the first one I read, the one that caused confusion is JS1. So this is JS2. So if I go to JS2 and I go back and I read the table of content, see, the table of content also only talks about non-centralized states. And the moment, remember in JS1, they talked about centralized states. In JS2, they're starting with non-centralized states. And they now talk about interrelationship some of some centers of civilization in pre-colonial Nigeria, early West African history, the Mali Empire, the Shongon Empire. If I look at the non-centralized state, because you see here, sometimes we should be circumvent. Anyone who has taken arms, when you read the first one, thinking the history started and ended here, children learn. You lay the first layer, next year they move on, next year they move on. If you now say, why would they be talking about only the decentralized state and they've ignored you? Blah, 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 blah. But you haven't read JS2. You haven't read JS3. You haven't read JS4. They are not repeating the same thing, but they are building on what they've taught before. Before now was a centralized state. Now they are talking about non-centralized state. Let me take this. And each one they start with the map of Nigeria here, right? And now it's talking about the centralized state. This is JS to pay attention. We've moved away from the controversial one in JS1, and now we are going into JS into non-centralized state. Now listen to this. Interesting fact. If you haven't subscribed to this, please like, share, and subscribe. Come on. Show love if you can. If you still want to join, you can. Non-centralized state refer to the states where a central authority does not exist. See? Non-centralized state, non-centralized state. And it continues. In these states, authority and activities of the state, especially those regarding governance and decision making, are not restricted to a centralized location or group of individuals. Non-centralized states are also referred to decentralized states or stateless society. Non-centralized states were mostly divided into several clans. The elders of the clan were responsible for maintaining law and order in the society. Most society which practiced a non-centralized system of social political organization are located in areas which hinder the easy coercion of population over large territory, e.g., in the deep forest, rocky and hilly environment. Non-centralized states in Nigeria Before 1800, we are located in the rocky and hilly part of central Nigeria, as well as the forest and delta area. The Igbo were the largest single group who practice a non centralized system of government. The Tiv, the Soko, the Ibibio, the Gwari, the Urobo, the Mumuye, the Birom also practice a non centralized system of government. Page what? Page chapter 1, page 2. Now, and it continues. Let me go to page 3. No, sorry. So why am I saying this? Is I am only calling for, I understand that the nation is on edge. Many people are, you know, suspicious of, Nigerians are suspicious of one another. But I would encourage us that before we run and probably cause confusion for ourselves, that we should, really think deeper. Then they continued and they said here, there are several non-centralized states in pre-colonial Nigeria. Among them were, again, starts with Igbo, TV, Idoma, Ibira, Igbo, Urobo, Ijo, Ijon, Oron or Oron, Ibibio, and Anang. If you look at the names mentioned so far, with the exception of the thieves, you know that these belong in one lingua family and in one region in the east. Sometimes, and this, if we now fast forward and come to today's nomenclature of Nigerian entity and its political association, they say, oh, hey, you people are not one. You people are not one. It's a clear case that many of you who are saying that did not read history. This is primary two. Primary two. History is this. And the history is telling you why this place is like this. They didn't make it. It's a system. That was why when the British came, they could implement direct rule. And in the north, because it is a centralized system, they have one person, an emir, or in the western region, they have one person, an oba, and they all worship and respect that oba. But in the other side, they are decentralized. They had their clans, they had their age grades, they have their omonna, and they ran things. These two systems worked. Each worked for the benefit of its region. Yes, for the north, it worked for them, but also for the east, it worked for them. So now saying that this one is useless, that this one, they don't have leader. Hey, this one, when they say something, they follow like Momo. That is arrant nonsense. It doesn't work that way. So you have your differences. This is what has been working for you. You stick with it. This is what the way you know how things are done. It's not disrespect. If I see maybe you're from the mid, if you're from the west, that I see an Oba, and as a titled man, I get out my hand. The only way to show you that I'm respecting that Oba to be an Oba, I'll put two hands just to say, Kabiesio. That I do not lie prostrate on the land because I don't know if I lie, if I go on the floor, if I will stand up again, because I'm not, this is not push up. It's not my culture. It doesn't mean I disrespect him. On the other hand, that a child from the Western region comes to my own region and prostrates to the king doesn't mean that child is inferior. No. It's just that we must get out of this mentality and understand that this is a blessed nation that has different cultures. The diversity of these cultures, if we begin to learn them and accommodate one another, you begin to see that this is actually a brilliant place. Bottom line is that is just two. Because I'm sorry I'm not, because if I was doing this on my laptop, wallahi, it would have been, unless if you guys want me to do it again, I can. If I'm doing it on my laptop, maybe you would have been reading with me because I'm not in the studio anyway, so if I was in my studio, then I should have, if I had my laptop. Hold on. So you can see we've looked at one, JS1, we looked at JS2. Now this is JS, this one is JS3. This is live because I bought the ebook. You see, this is JS, but pay attention that this is still not the approved one. I want to go back to the table of content. See, I said it before, in history, in teaching, you build. So it was wrong, even when this book is not approved, to have judged everything based on JS1, because JS1 is not the start and end of history. If you look at here, this is JS3, you will see you have trans Sahara trade, early European contact with Nigeria, British colonization of Nigerian territories, British contact with Nigeria, the evolution of Nigerian states, the amalgamation of Nigeria, the independence and the nationalistic movement. Have you seen it? You couldn't have started teaching JS1 about, because it's only when you get to pre-independence, sorry, only when you get to independence of Nigeria and thereafter can you now begin to talk about what happened. Probably eventually you now get into the conversation of the war, right? But you can see it started with trans-Sahara slave trade. Honestly, these books are, I bought them 400 and no 840 naira one. So I think I paid 6,000 something for all the books I bought online. I mean, I would encourage you actually, if not for anything, just buy them, read them. It's sometimes we think, sometimes when we read even the most basic books that are not complex, you begin to sometimes also find things that, yes, I learned it for a long time. I've ignored, not necessarily ignore. I've probably forgotten about it, but reading them again will now begin to make more sense. Did anybody request to join? I thought I saw someone requesting to join. Anyway, so this book, you can now see the transatlantic, trans-Saharan trade and whatnot, whatnot. Not entirely bad, not entirely bad. Okay, everyone. Like I said, I don't want to make this more than since no one is joining me, I do not want to make this more than an hour conversation. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me. Or please like, share, and subscribe. We will see starting tomorrow what we would do about the with the Nigerian Senate. Tomorrow things will be clear. We'll understand more, and if need be, Nigerians will do what we can do. Thank you. God bless. Bye from here. Good night.